Welcome back. Let's continue to hone in on resourcing and infrastructure issues in schools in the Eastern Cape. Equal Education's acting head in the province, Ona Matshaya, joins us this afternoon. Ona, it's great to talk to you. Thanks for joining us here on 405. And when we talk about, cases of infrastructure issues in schools, we're not talking about small issues. In fact, SGBs in the province describe this as schools that could cave in at any moment, seriously injuring or even killing a child.
Yeah, no, that's definitely correct. And I'm very disappointed even by the basic Department of Education. It can't be that almost 30 years later, we are still talking about the same thing, still having the same fight. But then come matric results, they will be thanking the kids for making it out of all odds. It shouldn't be that learners are still learning in such harsh conditions, and then we're going to thank them for persevering and learning in such conditions. Minister Siviwe Gwarube needs to make sure that learning happens in environments that are very conducive for teaching and learning. Another problem that we have picked up as Equal Education is that they hire implementing agents, which are the middleman between the Department of Education and the schools. Now, the implementing agents are the people that should be building the schools, hiring contractors. But when you speak to the schools and you actually do proper school visits, which I think the minister also needs to do, you learn that implementing agents are very overworked. Some leave projects midway, meaning that schools are incomplete. And what is being highlighted on the ground is very harsh. And Mr. Siviwe has played it down when she speaks to journalists and when she speaks to the media. Minister Siviwe actually needs to go to the schools and see the harsh conditions that the schools are in. And it's by no mistake that in the Eastern Cape, our campaign as Equal Education is the campaign of infrastructure, because that's the one problem that we see when we actually go and visit these schools and we see the condition that the schools are in. We've recently visited Amatole East in the former Transkei, and the conditions we saw there were very appalling. School learners couldn't learn inside the schools because they didn't have electricity, first of all. Some learners even cited that when they were writing exams, they had to use torches to actually see the exams that they were writing in the school classrooms because they didn't have any form of lighting inside the classroom. And when you also look at the toilets, the conditions that the toilets are in, you realize that there are still a lot of schools with paint-prick latrines, which should have been eradicated. And I know Minister Siviwe recently came out saying that she will meet the deadline on the 31st of March. But we say that we would like to see this happen as Equal Education, but it's no surprise that this has happened many times where deadlines are being shifted and no proper plan is being made. Because you can't say that you'll eradicate paint-prick latrines by the 31st of March, but you don't have a clear plan. And the Department of Education had a website that you actually go to see the state of infrastructure, which schools actually need a proper infrastructure. But when you actually go online, you realize that the timelines are very outdated, and you realize that the schools haven't been updated also on the actual website. So we say that the minister doesn't seem like they have a clear plan to eradicate paint-prick latrines, and they don't have a clear plan as to what should happen to infrastructures within the Eastern Cape. We are very disappointed, and we will be holding the Department of Basic Education accountable.
Yeah. In fact, the Eastern Cape is the worst province for school infrastructure in the country. Parents are sending their children to school in the desperate hope that they can change their futures through education. That's what we're trying to do, right? And instead of us allowing our children to meet other pupils in the country on an equal footing, and, we're not talking about fancy buildings, we're talking about the necessities, buildings that are not crumbling, toilets that work, windows that are not broken.
No, that's correct, because the minister herself wouldn't send her child or children to the schools that we see inside the Eastern Cape. The conditions that the schools are in the Eastern Cape is very appalling. You walk inside a classroom and you can see that the roof could fall in any time and cave in. And we say that this is not a conducive environment for learners to be learning in. It can't be that when a school child goes to school, you as a parent are worried that the child might not come back because of the conditions that the school are currently in. And we need the minister to act with the sense of urgency that the situation requires. We don't need more promises, but we need more action that we can actually see on the ground.
So in terms of the pit toilets issue that you just mentioned, Ona, people like you, Equal Education in the sector, were looking at this deadline with a lot of optimism, right? It is long overdue. It is a shame on our democracy that we are still using pit toilets in 2025. And yet, on the other side of that, We have had a deadline before. In fact, I was in conversation with the Limpopo MEC for Basic Education not too long ago, or it was the spokesperson from the department, saying that actually this declaration by the minister was made in the middle of the financial year and there are no funds for this deadline to be met.
That is correct. And I remember the South African Human Rights Commission recently issued out a report where they mentioned that there's over 400 schools in the Eastern Cape that don't have proper sanitation. Now you ask yourself, if the deadlines have been shifted before, what has changed now? Is the minister basically just playing games with us and the lives of other children? Because if you look at it and you actually do your proper research, you'll find that there are many kids that have passed away and drowned in actual pit latrines. And this should not be something that is being treated as a game to say that we will meet the deadline at such and so time, but it should be something that actually is happening. And you realize that when you say there's over 400 schools that still have such sanitation, and that is like 30 years later after democracy, what is the government actually doing? What is the basic department actually doing? And we need actual proper plans as to what is it that she's going to do. Now, we know that the deadlines have been shifted before. So as Equal Education, we will not be shocked if it's shifted again, but we need the minister to act with urgency that the situation needs.
What does this say, Ona, for pupils' right to an education? It seems like we're scraping the bottom of the barrel, aren't we, with that particular right?
Definitely. No, this is definitely a direct infringement of the rights of learners to attend school, because you cannot expect learners to go to such schools, because now you are infringing on their right to actually get quality education that they need. And then this then also changes, and you then ask yourself, what's going to happen to these learners that attend these schools? Will they actually make it out of school, or will we see a higher dropout rate that we actually see currently? Because when the minister does deliver the speech every single year and says that there's this percentage of learners who've actually made it out of school, that percentage normally doesn't account for learners that actually didn't make it out of school, learners that didn't make it from grade 3 up until grade 12. And we know that this is not a direct representation of the learners that actually go to school. You then realize that this is a direct infringement on the rights of learners to actually go and attend school and to actually get the quality education that they need. And if we want to build a proper society, we need proper education, and we need education that is equal and of quality and of good standard.
So when Equal Education says it's taking on the Basic Education Department, what is the plan here, and how can parents get involved?
So what we normally do is we do thorough research, find out which schools still have the problems and the problems that overlap, and we get the parents involved because they know the conditions of the schools better than we do. And we do try to hold the department accountable. Because something that we recently did in the Eastern Cape Department of Education last year is that we hosted a roundtable where we asked them to account actually as to what is actually happening in the province. And that's a roundtable that we're also going to be hosting as Equal Education soon, where we need the minister to also account as to what is actually happening in the Eastern Cape, what is the actual plan, and what about the previous plans that they had actually made. And the budget also, it can't be that the budget, every time there's a need for the budget to be cut, they'll be taking from the Department of Education and taking it to other sectors. We say that the education system is just as important, and these austerity measures shouldn't just be affecting the Department of Education, because this is a direct need that learners also need.
Shouldn't be affecting the education department at all, just given the state of affairs in particular provinces. Yeah. Ona Matshaya is Equal Education's acting head in the Eastern Cape. Ona, thanks very much indeed for your time. School infrastructure in the Eastern Cape, sharply in our radar this morning.